more than likely, the unintentional scenario is going to be one of a few things. It's going to be I gave or I took myself or I gave to my horse a supplement, a vitamin that ended up being not what I thought it was. I have a current case where an athlete was prescribed Celebrex, which is a fairly benign anti-inflammatory, and the Celebrex was in a pharmacy in the United States was contaminated. That happens alarmingly in high numbers. It's not just supplements, it's also prescription medications that can be contaminated. And so that's one scenario. Another one is the whereabouts scenario that I mentioned briefly, but somebody gets added to the pool and doesn't properly update their information, doesn't understand what it means. The FEI testing pool also has a lot of the national federations have their own pools as well, whether it be, British Equestrian, US Equestrian, whoever.
Paul, so again, I'll ask basic questions if that's okay for the
Yeah,
benefit.
please do. I think all of us asking questions is the best
Largely
way.
confident on these matters, actually. So on the whereabouts violations side of things, you're talking about whereabouts within the duration of the show. Is this correct? Or within the
No, so the whereabouts pool would be for out of competition testing, meaning in a competition, anyone can go, and if they're a member of their federation, they're going to be subject, and their horse will be subject to testing at that competition. And there's a certain list of substances that are banned in competition, which is not quite as big as the substance list banned out of competition, which is a bigger pool. And the whereabouts pool potentially bans you based upon anything that they could test you 24/7. They can come, and that's why they want to see what your information is all the time. The idea is that they want to be able to ensure at the top level that people understand they could be tested 24/7. So they can't give their horse or take themselves anything that they feel like might be out of their system by the time they compete.
So technically, a top level athlete, and we actually need to break down the levels because I think this is a lot, as Fiona has mentioned, this is quite a bit of burden. So technically, if you are the world number one, or if you're one of the top folk in the sport, the
It's
FEI
typically about top 500.
example at any point in time, any day of the week, whether you're in a show or you're not.
Correct. They'll send you a letter and say, you've been added, congratulations, you've been added to the anti-competition testing pool. And
And
the
what
National Federation will have one as well. That's not quite at the top level. So let's say 1 to 500 is at the international level, at the FEI level. Maybe 500 to 1,000 would then be at the national level.
and at what level of the sport does this start?
You've got to be competing at a fairly high level to be subject to out of competition testing. Certainly, if you're competing at the Olympic or world class level, you're going to be subject to it. But even a national level athlete could be added to the pool. A recreational athlete won't be tested out of competition, although they could be if they got a tip that somebody was doping their horse or injecting their horse with a banned substance. If you're a member of a national federation at any level, they could come and test you if they feel like there's basis. They target test. They could come and test and then take a sample at any time. It's just a matter of them allocating resources.
Well, you mentioned two sets of rules. One's relating to the riders, the athletes, and one's relating to the horse. And again, the ones relating to the horse end up on the rider, because the riders,
It's called responsible person. It could also be the owner.
In your experience, how much are the cases or the problematic scenarios fall in either category? Is it
You mean
large
how many are human doping versus horse doping cases? I don't know the breakdown. FEI might have a statistic on which one has more cases, but I mean, either one could equally lead to trouble. So I don't know if it matters so much maybe in one year there's 701 and 500 in the other, but I mean, they're both ways that riders, responsible people are beholden to both sets.
You'd
Yeah,
expect
the rule-
higher with the horses, I think.
I did say what, Fiona? I'm sorry.
I would expect it to be higher with the horses.
Probably, but it probably is. I don't have that statistic off the top of my head. I could look it up, but I don't know for sure which one it is. It also may depend on the category. For whereabouts, they've just added, you now have to have whereabouts information for the horse in addition to the rider. It used to just be the horse had to, I mean, the rider had to update as an athlete, a human athlete, their information, but now they've added this year that you're going to have to update. The horse is going to also have to be in the testing pool. And they're trying to, again, avoid a situation where somebody could give the horse something that will be out of their system before they race and will be undetectable.
Because they did do that with blood, didn't they, at one time? I don't know whether they still do. With
Yep,
race.
they test with blood and with urine, and actually they're also have recently added you can do hair sample analysis now. There's multiple ways to test. It's not just blood and urine anymore.
No, I mean for race horses, they used to
You're talking about thoroughbreds.
yeah. They used to
Yeah.
give them oxygenated blood, didn't they, just before they raced?
Right. I mean, they did used to do that. That's now been outlawed.
Can they find that if they do that?
I mean, there's a test for it. So
Yeah.
the labs are getting more and more sophisticated.
Like everything.
They can test down to the picogram now, which is a trillionth of a gram.
Gosh.
That's how low. And when you think about them being able to detect that kind of a level, when I talked about the contamination, sometimes somebody might have 30 picograms in their system, which on its own isn't going to help them. There's no way a picogram is going to help you or a horse. It's a question of then, was it contamination or was it intentional administration and then the substance has been metabolizing out for a couple of months and now we're caught them at the very end? That's the challenge is when you talk about thresholds is how to deal with that because it's difficult scientifically to distinguish between one or the other.